So, welcome everybody to episode 9 of The Power of You. It is New Year's Eve here in Australia, and I know the 30th of November, 30th of December, there in the US. So, how are you today, Bill?
Well, feeling in the holiday spirit for sure.
Definitely. It's been, it's this time of kind of introspection. It's this time of like reflection and looking back at the year that we've just had, and before moving in and taking all those learnings and lessons into the new year. So I'm very excited for what next year will bring. But I guess with the holiday season kind of in full swing, what is top of mind for me today, and the topic I wanted to talk about was integration. And when I say that, what do I mean? I think integration is a really it's important at any time of the year, but particularly at this time. We talked about it's a time where we like learn and we reflect on what has just been, and then we learn those lessons and really integrate them so that we can move forward as this new evolved version of ourselves into the new year. So I guess starting today, and maybe if you do or don't resonate with that term, integration, what does that mean to you? Or do you have, I know you have your own terminology, do you have another term that you utilize to talk about the process of embedding new knowledge and I guess evolving as a human?
I excuse me, I do use that term, integration, and I use another term very similar to it, integrity. And to me, what both of them mean is that all of the things that you associate yourself with, the things that you feel drawn to, feel good about, things that make you feel comfortable, that they all are connected with one another, and they're not, for example, contradictory of one another. Because our tendency as human beings is we have kind of a messy psyche. We form bonds with people, with ideas, aspirations, and sometimes, or frequently, we don't like make a map of them to see whether they all map together or whether there's some schizophrenia in there. And, I love this, but I don't love that. And actually they're the same thing. Uh-oh, now I've got to make a choice. Or do I, or don't I, or where am I now? That's what happens when you start to make progress in integrating. The first stage is confusion. And I know my friend Jerry Zoltman would say the natural tendency is to feel that that's a bad thing, that confusion is a bad thing. And if you do have confusion, you're in the wrong place and you better get out of there fast. His feeling is we have to embrace ambiguity and embrace not knowing and integrate with it and not avoid it, and accept the challenge and the momentary or maybe not so momentary discomfort of the feeling of confusion. Because as soon as you start to integrate things, you're doing something that's very unusual for most human beings to do, which is think. And I know we're always thinking. So what do I mean by that? We're not really thinking. What's happening is there's a worder in there that's on a kind of automated basis, like it's our computer trying to help us. It's taking the feelings that it detects from the body and trying to put a label on it. So if we're having certain kinds of excited feelings, we might put a label of stage fright on it, or we might put a label of anticipated excitement, and so on. So these labels are being placed on feelings, and it's all happening kind of automatically. That isn't really thinking, or at least my definition of thinking. My definition of thinking is more like a scientist or a lawyer looking for proof, evidence, facts, underlying reality, validation. Those are the things I associate with actual thinking. Daniel Kahneman wrote this book, Thinking Fast and Slow, and won a Nobel Prize for it. And he was talking about the same kind of stuff, that thinking fast is the stuff that happens automatically, and it isn't really like thinking. And thinking slow is really thinking. So you can't do the integration without the real thinking. Mm-hmm. Nor can you ignore you can't think without bringing your feelings into it, because feelings are actually more important to us than thinking. Most of our lives is all about seeking positive feelings in a kind of a homeostasis way. We're making associations with the things that make us feel good, and we're drawn to them, and we try to move toward them, and we try to avoid those other feelings. Now, those other feelings may have lessons to teach us, and avoiding them is just putting off those lessons. But we would need to use the thinking tool in order to actually engage with that as a challenge and try to solve it or experiment to find out whether there's something to be learned from those negative feeling states. But one way or the other, in order to be integrated, you have to consider all parts of yourself, the thinking and the feeling parts, the conscious and the subconscious. You have to bring it all together. That's the whole point of the integration. So you can't just take a rational approach to it. You can't just take an emotional approach to it. You have to take a holistic approach to integration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a lot there, right? In terms of the integration process, in order to do that, one needs time to think, and not just think on a day-to-day kind of, what am I having for dinner kind of basis. It needs to be deep thinking. And you said almost like a lawyer, right? Like critical thinking, looking for evidence for and against. And you also talked about logic versus like emotion as well. And I guess, and this is the thing, in order to have that deep thinking, right, you do need the space. And I think this is why this time of year, everybody's been going the whole year, and then even the holidays, people are hosting and like running around to like different family members, and I think that's one thing that this time of year really does provide space in terms of like time from work. And it's a one time of year I feel that the world really does kind of quieten down. But I think what you've shared there around, like, in order for integration to happen, deep thinking needs to happen. But in order for deep thinking to happen, you need to create the space. And you said that the confusion, or which is kind of uncomfortable, is actually a sign that you are starting to do this deep thinking. So, and although that discomfort or confusion can feel, uncomfortable, right? Like that actually is a sign that you're doing this deeper thinking and this deeper work. And I found it interesting that you shared about emotion versus logic. And this is something that I've realized myself a lot too, is in business, you often, it's like, oh, don't use emotion. Like, you've just got to be logical, right? And you've got to kind of get rid of your emotions and all this kind of stuff. And I don't think that's true, right? Because, like, emotions are like energy in motion, right? And I think it's very important that we pay attention to our emotions, and that we listen to them, and understand what it is trying to tell us or teach us. So, and yes, if you let emotion overrule you, then, without the logic piece, then, it is a balance, it's a tightrope, right? So I think for individuals listening, right, yeah, you might hear, oh, you're too emotional, or you act emotionally. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing to act from your emotions and understand your emotions, but balancing that with logic is the key, I think, to learning. And then once learning happens, then integration takes place.
For example, in support of what you just said, of course, there's negative emotion and there's positive emotion. And generally, all human beings would probably agree that they would rather have joy than sadness or fear or anger. And um, so there's that to consider, as well as if you're trying to think through where you want to go with next year, let's say, what are your goals for 2025? What do you want to do differently in 2025 that'll make life even better than in 2024? The process for that might start by the gratitude for what you did like about yourself in 2024, where the power of you was allowed to come out and did something good and made people happy and made you feel doubly happy. And so that might hold a clue to what to do in 2025, so as to have more of that. But if you detect negative emotion, that's the time to strive for inner clarity, because a negative emotion is intended by the universe to be a stimulus to learn something about yourself, so as to not have that negative emotion be able to take you over. And for me, what I need in order for my negative emotion to go away whenever it does arise is I've got to know what my solution path is. Whether it's achievable or it seems impossible, it's my solution path. So if I want to get over that, what am I going to have to do? Well, the one thing the solution path always has in it is a recognition that attachment, which is kind of an excessive degree of desire, it's a degree of desire where if that desire isn't fulfilled, you're not going to let yourself be happy. You're blackmailing yourself. So since that's illogical, you don't want that. In the integration, you want the integration to work. You don't want it to just be wishful thinking. You don't want to just go on well, maybe this method will work, maybe it won't work, but I've got nothing else, so I'll try the method. The method needs more help than that in order to really work. The method needs a degree of strong intention. I mean, that's the difference between praying and pre-dreaming. In praying, you're asking an outside entity to take over and fix it, and you leave the details to it or them. But if you have a strong intention, that means that you've decided that this is going to happen, that you are going to do this. And of course, there's a chance that you won't be able to, but you're not going to focus on that, because that will give that more power. You're going to focus on the intention, the strength of your own intention. And you'll bolster that with logical thinking about things. So, for example, let's say you're attached to a particular client. Let's say you have a client that's paying you 90% of your revenue, and you have no long-term contract with that client. You're just going on a day-to-day basis. And you think the client loves you, and you're doing good work, and you're working hard, but there's in the background, there's this niggling feeling about, well, I have no job security. And I see what's happening to people around me and working for other companies. here one day and pink slip the next day. And this is the nature of the times we're living through. So when that comes up, I say, I have to accept that. I have to accept that. There, otherwise, I'm a slave to it. Otherwise, I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to be projecting, well, you haven't fired me yet. How come? You know, uh, anyway, then there's other situations where you have to ask yourself, let's say you're very concerned that one day you're going to have an auto accident. It's just you do a lot of driving in your job and you're always in a car, and it seems like you've lasted this long, but it could just come out of nowhere. And so then you have to actually think about the probability of a car accident. And you maybe could look that up on Google and see, well, the average human driver has a 0.03% chance of being killed in a car accident. Okay, so how much time does that deserve in my personal computer? I've got this fantastic, powerful computer. Should I be giving time to thinking about? Well, no, the probability is extremely low. You're giving it more than 0.03% of your time. So you're obviously goofing here. This is a mistake you're making. You don't want to do that. Just anything below a certain level of probability, just put it aside. Yeah, it could happen. It could not happen. I don't want it to happen. Please God, don't let it happen. I'll drive carefully. Now, can I please go on with the rest of my life? Something else I wanted to say, though, was the gift of the holiday season is, as you say, it's perfectly timed to prepare us for switching into a new, fresh slate, a new, clean sheet of paper, a whole year to think differently and better and do all the good, great things. But then there's the rest of the time when we don't have that gift and we're running at top speed on a treadmill, basically. And you still have to make time every day for the deep thinking and the integration part. And so I've requested that my readers, my books and things, have an alone space every day of 20 minutes a day in which to figure out, how is life going? What's the good? What's the bad? How do I fix the bad? How do I make more of the good? What could I be doing better? How do I feel right now? I feel great. Okay, so no big deal. How am I going to use this time? Well, I'll just be open, see what comes through. Just watch my mind and spend 20 minutes doing that. And I could even close my eyes and meditate, or I could do hatha yoga, but I'll just watch my mind and see what my mind comes up with. Because in that 20 minutes, if you do that without any effort at all, great ideas, inspirations will pop into your head. They've been waiting for this moment of, because normally all kinds of stuff is going on in your head. You're working on more than one thing at a time, which we really can't do. So you're actually alternating between tasks very quickly to simulate multitasking. And you're probably not in the flow state because you're trying to get through a list of things as opposed to just relaxing and letting the higher self take over. So we need that alone space, and we need to budget for it, and we need to clear our minds and listen carefully to what our higher mind might be ready to tell us.
Yeah, so integration, we're talking about it today because it's the end of the year, right? And that's time for reflection. But really and truly, we should be integrating daily, right? And I know we've talked about this before, just taking, you talk 20 minutes start with 5, right? It's like, start with 5 minutes. It's this integration. The quicker we do this, the quicker we like evolve actually as a person, and the quicker that we grow. But by avoiding this integration or thinking then integration process, what we're actually doing is blocking our own growth. And it's kind of this false narrative. It's like we're in a society that teaches us if we stop, then we're falling behind, right? And actually that is anything but the truth. And this, actually, I feel like you say it, slowing down actually is kind of the cheat code, right, to speeding up. And it's so against like the societal's narrative, or like the society's expectations of us, or what it wants to do, that it feels so unnatural for people. And even when they do slow down, maybe even at this time of year, they feel guilty. It's like, oh my god, like I should be doing, like, why is nobody online? I want to be doing these things, right? And it's been able to like, the word that you said that really stuck out is intentional. Is being intentional with your time. You have this time now, right? And you can create this time throughout the year. Like you're going to tell me that you can't. People listening are going to go, no, I can't. You don't understand, Natalie. I've got 3 kids. I've got a full-time job. I'm run off my feet. You can make 5 minutes, and it is again, I always say, it's not, I don't have time. It's not a priority to me. And that's what it is. When you are not creating time for yourself, you are saying with your action that I am not a priority. Like I myself am not a priority. So what do you need in order to make yourself a priority? Because your narrative is probably telling you, well, I need to do this for the kids. I need to do this for my husband or my wife or my friends. But truly, what all those people need is you at your best. And if you need to be at your best, you need time for you. So actually, the kindest thing you can do is make yourself a priority. So when you tell yourself you don't have time, sure, I know everybody has a busy life, but it's about making the time, because you are a priority, and it's about being intentional with the time. You use the word intention, and I think that is a really powerful word, because a lot of us spend our lives in this kind of haze of just activities and the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. When you slow down, you have time not just to, reflect and think, but then also you've talked about a way out or a plan. You then create time, which allows you to be intentional, right? So, and then being intentional with your time. People say this to me a lot. Oh my God, Natalie, you must be so busy, like traveling and, building the business and doing all this stuff. And it's like, I don't feel that way, because I am intentional with how I spend my time. Like, what is priority to me? Like looking after myself physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, the whole gambit is that is important to me. My family is important to me. My work is important to me, and I'm intentional, and I live my life based on what my priorities are, right? And I think intention, and so for anybody listening, by taking this time and space to reflect, it will then create, it will help you create this plan, or this way out, as I called it, right? It's like a logical way out, through intention. So I think, the planning piece is very important, but you can't plan without thinking. So it's kind of like a chain of a chain, a chain reaction, if you like. So in order for integration to take place, you need to do the deep thinking. And in order to do the deep thinking, you need to create the space. And in order to create the space, you need to make yourself a priority. So this all circles back to you and you making yourself a priority.
Yeah, it's believing in yourself, investing time in yourself, understanding yourself, clearing out the traumatic damage that's been done by experiences that you've never totally assimilated, that you may have repressed or didn't repress, that come back and agonize you with guilt feelings or whatever to this day. Shame and guilt are being repressed from early incidents that, if you could recall them, things that really hurt you, made you feel like you hated yourself and wanted to punish yourself. And the moments when you were at your best, when you were in the flow state and you rose to the occasion and it was one of the high points of your life. Remembering all those things and then integrating them. I mean, on one hand, here are your strengths. Here are the moments of weakness. Do you still have all those weaknesses, or have you already fixed those weaknesses? If there's one left to be dealt with, okay, that should become a priority. Get rid of the pain points that are still residual in there that haven't been integrated. So when you look back at your life, you forgive yourself for all those things that you did that you constantly bother you whenever you think of them, so that when they come back next time, it's a whole different way of looking at them, that they were lessons you actually learned and you became stronger and better. And you have to thank the universe for giving you that experience and forgive yourself, because years ago, you made yourself incapable of making that mistake again. You really solved it. And why punish yourself for something you've already outgrown and fixed?
Mm-hmm.
So then you're integrated, because there's no bad things in your memory that haven't been processed and assimilated. You haven't, all of the lessons that your mind wanted you to learn, you think you're up to date more or less on it. And you've caught up on years and decades of not paying enough attention to those things. And now all of your wants and desires, you now know which ones are the most important to you. And now you know which ones are less important to you. And now you can make decisions rationally that lead you to your happiest state, which will also be your most effective state, where you'll be able to do the most for other people as well as yourself. So the empowerment of your own power will lead to more powerful protection and development, nurturing of other people, making their lives better. You can only do that if you are strong enough and integrated enough yourself. Otherwise, you'll make well-intended moves to help other people, but they might not be as effective, because you yourself are still layers and layers of foggy confusion that you've tolerated. That's what we do. We tolerate all of that unassimilated stuff because it just seems like, where do I start? And if I do start, is it going to drive me crazy, or is it going to make me feel terrible because I'm not getting anywhere? It's run in circles and go over the same ground over and over again, which in the beginning, sometimes it feels that way, like you're going in circles and you're not getting anywhere. But then if you go blank for a while, the answer will pop into your head and you'll see that you're actually on a spiral. You may be covering the same ground, but with more perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really just going in a circle. It's an upward spiral.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I call that upward spiral transcending, right? We're not going around in circles, we are transcending. So if you actually look downwards, it's like a spiral staircase. That's what's happening. But when we're in it at the time, we can't necessarily see, and it feels like we're almost going around in circles, but we're actually going upwards as we learn and as we grow. And talking a lot there about the things that we push down, right? Things that have happened perhaps even way back in childhood, right? And, throughout our lives. And it's almost like, it's almost like mud just keeps like another layer keeps getting added. Something that I always say is like, it's not our fault, everything that happened to us, but it is our responsibility to clear it. And there's this really powerful, I'm not going to take this as my own work. I saw this somewhere else, but there's this really powerful visual actually of, a glass, like a glass, right? A glass, and it shows kind of a glass with like dirty water, right? And everybody starts life with a cup, right? And some water might be super clean and some might be super, super dirty, right? And whatever cup we're given, that's the cup we're given. And again, it's not our fault if we've been given a really dirty cup or a really clear cup. Like, it's just what it is. It's just fact, right? And we can either make ourselves a victim of that and be like, oh my God, I've got such a dirty cup. Like, I have got like this is just going to be so much work to clear this. Like, oh my God, I don't want to do it. It looks too dirty. We can make ourselves a victim to that, or we can take responsibility for it and be like, okay, I do have like this really dirty cup that I've been given, and it's not fair because somebody else has been given a clear cup to start with. So we're not all starting from the same playing field. I know that, like, we are not starting all from the same, starting point. But again, yes, it's not fair, right? But what are you going to do? Are you going to make that? Are you going to become a victim to it, or are you going to do the work to clean it? And what you've talked about there in terms of the process of unpacking everything, and it can feel like you're going around in a spiral. This visual that I saw, and it was really powerful for me. It's like, it's the process of clearing the cup, right? And that isn't easy. It's not easy. And in order to clear it, if you imagine almost this muddy cup, in order to do that, everything has to come up. Everything has to come up and it needs to come out. And that isn't nice, right? Like, that isn't a nice experience. So I know why people avoid doing it. I avoided doing it. Like, I think most people avoid doing that because it's uncomfortable, it's dirty, and you don't know how long it's going to take until you get to the bottom of the glass and you can see clearly again. So I understand that, and experiencing that myself, it is an uncomfortable process, and sometimes it can feel like it's getting worse before it gets better. But I think, again, it's leaning into trusting the process and trusting that you have the ability to clear this cup and to clear kind of your field, if you like, so that you can, as you say, be in your most effective place, like continue to grow, continue to learn, and continue to impact the lives of others. So the more intentional you are with your time and, in doing the work, and whatever that work looks like to you, to clear your cup, if you like, the quicker you will, the quicker that, you will be able to integrate a lot more, a lot easier and a lot quicker, because you're doing so in an empty cup. That process of integration can feel quite challenging when your cup is completely dirty.
And there's a lot of that going around. Dirty cups. It's gotten worse in the last few thousand years. We thought we were making progress toward a better life for all of us. But currently, it doesn't seem that way. It seems like we have been herded into groups called nations. And within each nation, certain people are running the show and other people are dirty cup holders. Um, so it's not the most optimistic of times. And in fact, it's one of the most cynical times I remember ever experiencing in this life. You know, my memories of this life, there were periods of time when we were ebullient with enthusiasm for the future, the hopes and the dreams and the aspirations and the hard work to make the world a better place. It was all working. And there was progress and we all felt great. And this 21st century was supposed to be even better than the 20th, but it's not turning out to be much different than the early 20th century. It's kind of rewinding and repeating the same good versus evil, blah, blah, simplifications that make it easier for us to think we understand what's going on. But this is the time when we stand to make the most progress against these kinds of challenges. It's almost as if the universe is giving us more challenge because we were kind of goofing off a bit. We were taking the easy life, easy way out, and not giving it enough time for concentration, meditation, contemplation, clarity, understanding ourselves, being more intentional about our lives, being more aspirational about what powers we might have inside of us that are laying dormant. There's all kinds of evidence, scientific evidence, that we're not using all of the powers that we have. And it's pretty obvious when you look at your own life and you can see, wow, look how great I performed on that occasion. Look how terribly I performed on that occasion. There's definitely stuff going on inside me that I have to find it and draw upon and make more ever present. I've got to bring that flow state and observer state, compassion, feeling of oneness. I want more of that. That's what I need more of. And yeah, life isn't making it easy, but that's probably because I need it. I need the provocation to really do the hard work on myself, because otherwise, if it's just going to be I'm on the dole and I can just goof off for the rest of my life and I'll have food on the table, and as long as I don't aspire to anything, everything will be okay. And that's kind of the cop-out that most people have chosen because they feel they don't have the capabilities of overcoming the situation. Mm-hmm. So they're taking on side jobs and gigs and this and the other things, scraping up money and figuring that money is going to solve everything. And this terrible cloud of cynicism. I mean, young people especially, we always counted on the young people to not be cynical. They would be the ones who would be hopeful and do the right thing. But now social media has made it uncomfortable for people to be idealistic, because then other people quickly write back and say, "Ooh, I'm cringing." And so the challenge is definitely all around us. And our best shot is to give ourselves the best chance. We need a little bit of time each day. Let's start with 5 minutes. And be open to the new ideas you might get in those 5 minutes, and be kind to yourself and believe in yourself. Give yourself a break. Be on your own side.
Yeah. And I think, knowing even from my own experience, like I remember there was a time that I would do anything to be, to be kept busy, right? Like, filling my time and my diary, seeing friends, like, making plans, like always that, working or whatever it is. And I know to anybody that listening that may feel the same way, it's uncomfortable, right? And it's uncomfortable, and it, in the time at that time, it doesn't, you want to be anywhere other than with yourself, right? You want to be anywhere else. And I get it because I did it myself, right? I get it. But the truth is, you can't ever escape yourself. It will come back. We tell ourselves that if I keep pushing this down, like, it will eventually disappear. But all you're doing is compressing it, and all you're doing is compressing it, and it will come out at some point. So it is a lie that we tell ourselves that, like, if we keep suppressing it, it will disappear. It won't. It's like anything, like the mud needs to come out, right? Like it needs to come out. And I guess the thing is, do you want to compress years and years and years worth of mud to clear? And, probably, you'll tell yourself, when you're in your 60s or 70s, like, oh, I'm too old to do this now, right? Do you really want to compress years and years and years worth of, like, non-integration, non-clearing? Do you really want to compress that? Because, again, a bit like procrastination or multitasking, right? Like, we tell ourselves, if we, like, with procrastination, like, oh, if we wait, like, if we wait, like, it might go away. That's what we're telling ourselves. Oh, if we wait, it might go away. But what happens, right? What happens when you procrastinate? You push it off, push it off, push it off, and you're telling yourself it's going to go away, and it doesn't. What happens? It makes it worse. It's like when you get that parking ticket. I do this all the time. Get the parking ticket. Oh, forget about the parking ticket. Oh, I don't want to deal with that. Before you know it, you've got a fine. And then and then after the fine, you're going to get the court citation. And then, before you know it, you're going to get, points on your license or whatever it is. So I guess that's an analogy. But this is the same thing without doing that integration work. You are compressing, and you're compressing that mud, and you are actually making it harder, because it will come up at some point. So I get it. It's uncomfortable, but you don't want to end up in court when you could literally just pay the ticket. like that's like, and that's it. And it's never as bad as you think it is. I think that's the other thing. We think that things are going to be really, really, like, it's just like procrastination, whether you procrastinate at work, procrastinate at home, we think it's going to be awful, right? Like we almost put it into like, it's like a mental filing cabinet, right? And like, we almost put it in the mental filing cabinet and think, oh my God, like, that is so big, I do not want to deal with that. And we kind of lock it up, and and we just don't want to look, right? But then actually, it's like a Sunday night. It's like how I used to feel about Sunday nights. I always said Sunday nights are worse than Monday mornings, because you would just get on and do the thing, whereas Sunday night you were thinking about it. And it's the same with the mental filing cabinet. Thinking about it is always worse than just doing it. And what happens when you don't just take action and you don't just do the work? It gets heavier, it gets bigger, and the consequences get worse. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, don't procrastinate on the integration process and on doing the work, because ultimately that filing cabinet is always going to be there. The mud is going to continue to compound, and if not now, then when?
I think that's a great ending note for this session, and we're right on time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, another fabulous conversation today, Bill. Thank you so much for your time. And to dear listeners, we hope you have learned more about integration, and if you are able to think about what it means to you. What do you need to do, not just this holiday season, but also going into 2025, to make sure you're integrating on a daily basis. So you can find that 5 minutes. You can make yourself a priority. Bill, would you want to say any more words before we let everybody go?
And you're not alone, really. All of our minds are interconnected. The universe is one thing. Science is starting to figure that out. Science itself, which always had this blind spot about God and religion, they're coming around to really getting it, that we are one connected thing. And because of that, at the most basic level, is love. We're all together one thing. We care about ourselves, therefore we care about everything, and vice versa. So it's a benevolent process. It's trying to help us clean out our cups. And if you just open your mind to that as a possibility, you'll see that it works.
Open your mind. We're all in this together. And yeah, the universe is out to help you. Well, wishing you listeners a fabulous new year and a happy 2025 when it comes. And we will be back again next month. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you next time.